there was this idea of tracking causes of eviction. Kind of,
Yeah,
what are the reasons why people are getting evicted? Can we kind of somehow collect that data and get an analysis of that? Because, you know, there probably is reasonable concern for some of the evictions that exist out there. A rental registry that was discussed, even though the council pretty much turned that idea down at the last council meeting, but I'm just sharing with you the conversation from last time as opposed to any specific policies that Alan and I are going to push forward with the group of you all. Rent stabilization was also brought up in that discussion. A rental assistance program. We found that to be really effective during the pandemic. We received funding through HUD to a rental assistance program, and so it seems like a good thing for us to work on continuing in the future. And then expanding legal services. So can we provide a space for renters in the community to have access to legal services if there are questions around maybe what's going on with their lease and issues that they may be having. So that was the renter related stuff. There was a housing supply stock conversation. And so things included in that were funding for affordable housing development. And one of the interesting things about that is a lot of the funding that we get that's designated for affordable housing, the subsidized funding that help the development of affordable units, it comes through the federal government, and they have a lot of criteria in regards to what qualifies people for affordable housing. And one of the things that was also part of the discussion, and jump in here at any time, Alan, and stop me, is so the area median income, the AMI, which is what is used to determine who qualifies for an affordable unit. The area median income that we use for this region is for the entire county. And the county, in comparison to the AMI just for the city of Monterey, is a lot lower. So for somebody to qualify for affordable housing, it's a higher hill to climb to qualify for affordable housing in the city of Monterey, because you tend to have a higher level of income, which you make too much at that point, when you really don't, because the cost of housing is very expensive. So creating a local pot of funding, which also, by the way, makes us more competitive for state level grants. And so we can expand that funding beyond those local dollars. Another idea was an affordable ADU program. And so the idea of the city working with folks to maybe you get a low interest loan, and somehow we might require that you make that an affordable unit. Something along those lines.
What's that called again?
A low interest loan
Okay.
for ADU development. Okay, hotel conversion came up. So there's the whole Project Home Key that I'm sure a lot of you have heard about. Salinas moved forward with a couple of projects. I'm hoping, I've had some initial conversations with Hans since our conversation last week. So I'm hopeful that the city will be able to lean forward in that space and try to find a potential solution there. Public-private development projects. So can we look at some public-private partnerships is really what that is aimed at. And I think a good example of that is what we're already doing. The city looked at all available property within the city of Monterey, and we've identified 4 city-owned sites that we can develop upwards of about 50 units on some of these sites. And so we released an RFP. We've selected the developers, and we're currently going through the exclusive negotiating agreement. But could there be further opportunities to look at some public-private partnerships? And then the last one is developing the city-owned Fort Ord property. So we looked at that, I think, in 2019, and I can't remember exactly why we nixed it. We put it aside for now, and I was trying to do some research. And
There would be a legal challenge.
Okay.
To what, the water?
Probably.
Because supposedly we have water on
No,
paper.
it's not contaminated.
So there's the Fort Ord project. I'm just putting it because it was part of our discussion last week. So that was the program ideas. Now the financing side, right, where this is the fun stuff. So the funding ideas, there was the idea of an unoccupied tax or a vacancy tax that came up from, I think, were you the one that brought that up? I think you brought that
Nancy
up.
put the idea in.
Nancy put the idea. It was
And I've done some research on it.
Did you?
We thought
Okay,
it was because
well,
of the house next door.
Yeah.
Do you want to share some of the things that you found out about it?
Sure. Now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No pressure.
So,
Wait, could you pause a minute? I just want to know what she's talking about.
oh,
She gave us
So
so
she's-
much information that I'm...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So quickly, a vacancy tax or an unoccupied house tax is when a unit is left vacant on the market and nobody is living in it for a certain period of time, let's say 6 months. That unit is taken off the market for somebody that lives here locally to be able to occupy it. And one of the biggest challenges in regards to the affordability of housing is that there's not enough housing supply available for the people that live here. And so the moral side of the vacancy tax is that you would motivate people to not have second homes so that people that live here can occupy the unit. But if they do choose to live in the unit, or I'm sorry, have a second home and leave it vacant, then we would tax them and then use that funding to help support housing related programs. So that's the general concept.
I understand.
yeah. So, there's only about 3 or 4 places that have passed that. One is in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is like the best because they have results in that. The other one's in Washington, D.C. The other one is, I think, Oakland, like you said, and then San Francisco and Los Angeles. They're all looking into it.
And Santa Cruz as well.
Yeah, and so I studied the Vancouver one because I like that one better. I know you said that Oakland is that's a flat tax, like $6,000. That's not fair to the middle income people. And so what Vancouver has is they started out with a 1.5% of the home's value, which is like a property tax, and they upped it to 3%. And so I was like thinking about my neighbor next door. So that's a 1.3. That'd be $39,000 a year, and these people can afford it.
Yeah.
You know, and so. But there's a lot of definitions of unoccupied, and they have a declaration of you have to submit a declaration of occupancy, and you need some kind of tax administrator. There'd be quite a bit of overhead, but it's pretty good. It's
I appreciate
and then
you doing
what troubled me was I looked at the population of the city of Vancouver, and that was $600,000. And then I looked at, I don't know these population numbers, but I looked at the city of Monterey, and it was like 20,000. So it was like 4% of whatever we need. And then I looked at the population of Monterey County, and that was more like 400,000. Because that would be so cool. That was one of the challenges, is that it's like by border, so you can just go across the other city to find something. But then I realized that, wait a minute, that's population is residences. So that's doesn't count the second and third homes. They're not counted in that population.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a scaling, problem and administration, but and it would need data, to figure out,
Which
how
is
many
why
are
we
there.
needed a registry that they turned down.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to know why that was turned down, because I don't understand why they don't want data. You need that.
Because they know that if we have data, we can accumulate ammunition that we
But
don't
I mean,
have
it's
now.
for making our community better. For school teachers, I mean, I just don't understand.
Remember
it.
that when it's time to reelect.
I know. So yeah.
Well,
so anyway, that's just what I learned.
So one of the challenges of doing it based off of an assessment of the property value is, and this is just my understanding, I may not have the full picture here, but what I understand of it is it wouldn't go, if we were to move forward with the vacancy tax with that model, it wouldn't go in front of the voters of the residents of the city of Monterey. It would be property owners would vote on it. So then they would have a vote. And how much of a problem would that be in the city of Monterey compared to like Carmel? I'm sure it's a different situation.
Not so much here.
They're going to vote that they don't want to be taxed, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
It
But
would be
between
less
the
of a
two
problem
cities,
here.
less of a
It'd be
problem
more of a
here.
problem in Carmel because
But then it's going to cost a lot of money to put that thing on the ballot.
yeah.
Yeah, so you already know what they're going to say.
So
Well,
there's
but Tyler, the renters get to vote too, right?
so if
if
was
it's on a
based off of
ballot
the
measure-
if it was based off of the assessment of the property value, it would be the homeowner, the property owner that
property
gets to
owner.
vote.
Really?
Wow.
But if it goes on a ballot
So
measure,
that's why
Even
I
though
think
it's not their,
openly-
even though it's not their resident, even though they're not Central principal
Right.
residents.
yeah.
The mechanics of that work, how do you identify the voter in terms of just their property taxes, and then they send a special ballot to the property owners?
I think
to
it's
conduct a
I think
vote?
it's something.
'Cause I've never heard of anything
yeah,
like
I
that.
haven't looked.
It's called the prestigious ballot.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into it, and it's definitely something we can talk about more. So let me just try to keep going here. I appreciate you
Yeah, so I did all
sharing
that, and I have a meeting with a retired real estate attorney just to kind of look involved.
I love
oh
it.
yeah.
I love it. There we go. So that's something that, it's something for us to consider. Just keeping going down the list here just so we can get everything out. Another thing was a property transfer tax, which is not what we phrase it at. I was telling the group that was here last time that that I couldn't remember the name of it, but basically you would tax the sale of a property, right? So let's say somebody's home, and you could do this in many of different ways, but let's say a home is $1.5 million, and let's say the way that we set up our property transfer tax in the city of Monterey is to say any home over $1 million, any cost of the value of the property over $1 million gets taxed 1%. The first million won't get taxed, and we could do something where all sales get taxed, but I think you would want to have some cushion there, perhaps something reasonable. And maybe the next million is another 1% or 2% on the sale of a property. And so the person that's buying that property pays that tax. And the idea, one of the big ideas behind this is to get rid of this speculative market. One of the things that came up, and I can't remember who said this at the last meeting, but Bill McCrone's property up on the top of the hill. If you don't know where Bill McCrone's, he lived. He 498
Yeah,
High Street. He lives at the top. He lived at the top of Old Town here. Beautiful property, but it's gone through 3 different ownerships since the property was sold initially, and now it's up for sale again for 2.9,
Almost $3 million.
almost
Oh
$3 million.
my gosh.
And it was originally sold, I think, for 1.
2.5.
And it's what, a year? Is it?
I mean,
No, it was
that's
1.2
typical.
originally,
It's
and
not
then
that long ago.
so
No,
right.
it's
So what's happening is this speculative market. They'll purchase the property, they'll sit on it until it makes some value, and then they'll sell it.
Right.
Do you know who the existing flipper is?
I can't. Does anybody know who the current
I
owner
do,
is?
I'm telling you.
Oh, who is it?
So, and this is, okay. It's 2 foreign nationals.
Exactly.
And it's unknown whether they're father, son, or brothers. And it's hard money. They never went through any bank. It's personal loans, 15% payback.
Interesting.
Thank you.
So there's these things that happen that this tax would particularly target, and we could tax that and use that. Trying to keep us going here. Cannabis Retail Tax came up, so we're currently going through the process of allowing retail cannabis in the city of Monterey, which is, I think it's likely to move forward in some capacity. What that actually looks like is still up for debate, but the point being is that there's been conversation about using some of those funds for things to do with housing. So there's space
Can
for
I
us.
jump in on that quick? So for me, that's something really important because I think it's very low-hanging fruit because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it will generate money. So if folks want to see some of that go to housing-related purposes, you need to come out to those council meetings when we get into that and make that known because we can kind of earmark some of the money for certain programs.
When do you see that happening?
I think it's supposed to move forward in the summer with probably implementation in the fall.
Yeah.
And is
so-
there an alternative
That
way? I
long?
just honestly feel like I've attended enough of these meetings at this point that I don't feel it's really doing anything. Are there additional ways to communicate, express?
You can email, but I will say if being at a meeting and speaking is more impactful.
Yeah. City of Salinas did a survey of how they wanted their government to spend their surplus budget. I mean, how do you reach the masses
So
who
we-
maybe are at work or have children, can't come?
We
Or
did do
not
a
to-
survey. The city did do a survey. They sent a postcard in the mail to every resident in the city and asked us some. Was that Is that cannabis? Sorry, there's so
Yeah,
many
it was
different.
cannabis. I
Yeah.
don't know if they asked them how they wanted the money spent, though.
You're right.
No, I think you're thinking of the sales tax that some of the verbiage included specific programs.
I never got
No.
I don't think any.
I know the something went out on cannabis. I don't know how extensive it was, but Alan's absolutely right. I mean, the best way that people can give value and impact there is to show up to council meetings, and then we also have your say Monterey. So for those that aren't aware of that, Have Your Say Monterey is a really good program that we just started to allow folks to kind of give some feedback that's publicly available for folks to see, public comments and stuff like that. So, but speaking at a council meeting is so much different because you all see us hearing it, and so it keeps us more accountable as opposed to some elusive website that people maybe do
Don't
or
go
do not
to.
know about or don't go to.
And the meetings are virtual. When we say go to a meeting, it's not like, we're not only going to be going to them in person.
Yeah.
So just kind of moving us along here, Project Home Key, again, I was speaking to that earlier in regards to looking at some of the hotels in the city of Monterey. That's a potential other source. Municipal bonding is a potential idea. Not necessarily my favorite thing because you're deferring that cost, but it was something that came up in the discussion last week. And then collateralizing city-owned, Fort or executed land sale. So what do we do with that property to leverage that in a financial way? And I have my feelings on that, but I'll wrap it up there in regards to the discussion from last week. So you can see it was a very fruitful discussion, and I appreciate all those that were able to make it out last week. We have some new folks here, and so the idea for today was to try to find a way of merging these together, which maybe we could try to get to at the end. But I also want to open this space up for everybody, particularly the new faces, to throw any ideas out, or folks that were here last week that thought about it more, that might have more ideas. So I'll stop talking now, and then maybe we could just go around quickly, and we don't have too much time, so if everybody can try to keep it to 2 or 3 minutes each, and either share program ideas or financial ideas, financing models, ideas, either way, either or. And then I just ask that you also introduce yourself, tell us who you are, maybe what neighborhood you live in too would be helpful. So ma'am, we'll start with you.
Okay, so I'm Eloise Shem, and so I don't live in Monterey. I live in Seaside, and I'm just really concerned about all this money that comes from the CARES Act through the pandemic. Every day I hear from Governor Newsom that multi-million dollars for a home key, and private donors giving money for that, but I don't see anything manifesting in Monterey. In other places in California, I see it manifested, but I don't see it manifested in Monterey. The money that comes down the pipeline from the federal, and so that just kind of worries me because I've been on the verge of homelessness. I've been homeless, and pretty much the response I get is, it's too bad for you. There's nothing we can do about it. To the point that really I feel discriminated against. I don't feel like I get, the access to the services that I know are being funded. I don't get the services. I'm blocked from that for some reason. And that's a concern to me. I don't want to be homeless. But I'm on the verge of it again. And I had to, like with the home key thing, during the pandemic, the CARES stuff, I had to scramble. I was almost homeless from getting that rental assistance. I had to go with Ben Nurse, and then he wouldn't process it, and then I had to go to Hartnell College. It's like, it's bureaucracy, too many levels of bureaucracy that you're spinning around, and in the end, you're not, you're not getting any housing.
So I would say two quick things. One is, and Alan, you might be able to speak to this better because you were talking about it last week, but we get funding from the federal government through HUD, about 1.2 million annually, and that supports different housing-related programming in the city of Monterey and actually regionally, right? So some of that goes to the Veterans Transition Center. So there what is the homeless service?
Community Youth Services.
There was another. What was that one that?
Salvation Army.
Yes.
Salvation Army in Seaside rendered me homeless in 2013 because I applied for rental assistance there for my small apartment in Marina, and they denied me. And so that's all this time now.
So I appreciate you sharing this story, and I empathize with you. I've been homeless myself before as well, and I know what that experience is like. So I'm sorry that you're going through that, and that's exactly why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Because we need to be able to make sure that we're taking care of people like you as a community. We need to take care of each other. So I appreciate the feedback input. We do have some funding coming in from the feds. We also are having our staff looking into the idea of Project Home Key funding becoming available here. So our fingers are crossed that we're going to be successful. Of course, one of the challenges is water. There's a lot of challenges in regards to housing, and we can't keep giving excuses. We need to take some action, and I think Monterey has a lot of space to be a leader in that regard. So I appreciate you sharing your input today with us. Remind me your name again?
Eloise.
Eloise, thank you for being here. Eloise, thank you.
Eloise Shim.
Eloise Shim, thank you
Yeah.
for being here. I love your glasses too, by the way.
Thanks.
Okay, DK, I know you just jumped in here. We did feedback from what we heard last week, and we're just going around seeing if there's any new ideas or just quick introductions, however you want to best do that.
Sure.
2 to 3 minute time frame.
I'll be quick. PK Diffenbaugh, Superintendent, Monterey Peninsula Unified. Was here last week and just shared the tremendous impact of the lack of affordable housing has on the district, both in terms of students, with around 21% of our students qualifying as homeless under the McKinney-Vento Act, which doesn't mean they are unhoused, but often means they're 2 to 3 families in one living dwelling. And then as well as we hire about 80 or 100 teachers a year, which is about 20% of our teachers, and largely because of the lack of affordable housing, many teachers moving out of the area. So very interested in hearing ideas and finding solutions. I agree with you completely. There's lots of reasons why we can't get it done. I'm really looking forward to reasons and actions towards getting it done. So thanks for providing this space for this community event.
Well, and I'll add on, one of my biggest takeaways from conversations with BK regarding teachers is the district is getting sucked from having to retrain new teachers that are coming into the school district, and then they come here and they realize it's so unaffordable that I'm going to leave. So there's this high turnover rate. And so now we're spending a lot of our tax dollars, right, going towards a school system that's not operating effectively because of the high cost of housing. So we definitely can be a partner with the school district in solving some of these issues. And there's so much more to go in on all these, but I'm going to try to keep us moving along here. So prior council member Libby Downey just arrived, so appreciate her being there, and her husband Wayne that's walking away. He's sneaking away. So Libby, we're just going around quickly doing intros, and if you want to share a sentence or two in regards to the topic. I know we had this conversation initially last week, so maybe something really quick so we can get around to everybody, especially the new voices.
Okay, I apologize for being late. I was at a memorial service of ministers, so that's why I'm late. Oh, I'm so glad to see so many people here. Great, thank you. Welcome. The only thing I would say is not having been homeless myself, but I've been exposed because I was a public health nurse. I would go into lots of homes where there would be about a 800 square foot house, and each bedroom would have a family of up to 5 people in each bedroom, renting that bedroom and living together. So
Well, and
Thank you.
I appreciate Libby's comments. We talked about this a few weeks ago, and you know, she's identifying that she's never had to deal with homelessness herself, and I appreciate that because she's identifying her place of privilege. And you know, we're both homeowners. I know several people here are also homeowners, and it is important for us to make sure that we're using our place of privilege to make sure that we're helping those that aren't as fortunate as we are. We don't know people's life circumstances, and I appreciate hearing some of these stories because it's helpful to give perspective. So I appreciate and love you, Libby. Thanks for being here. Okay, Karen, let's keep moving along here.
Yeah, I brought stuff, but you won't have time for that.
Do you want to?
No, I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, I am 100% totally pro rent control in this area. I think it's the only thing that will work, despite all of the obstacles that we know about. A lack of water, lack of building, more people moving into the area, although our population rate hasn't changed in 10 years, is going to necessitate it. People that live here and rent here are under a great deal of stress. I don't care if you're low income, moderate income, middle income, we're all feeling it. And the slimy property managers that they have here now have the upper hand on all of it. So, I'm going to give you a quick example. My immediate neighbor in the building had a plumbing problem. They've been working on it for 2 months in the kitchen. We share the kitchen wall. Anyway, she's been inconvenienced, having everything ripped out. And they told me that it was done. You know, I thought, well, great for her, finally, right? I renewed my lease on the 1st of March. Paid the deposit, paid the rent, paid the insurance, all the
Sorry, real quick. You paid a deposit on a rental that you're already in?
Yeah. Other story. And, and then they assessed me a fee because I wrote them a check. As opposed to using
Because they have
their
a portal that they
portal.
want you to use.
Now I get a $25 fee to hand them a check. Anyway.
How dare you pay us?
Exactly. But now, so here's the issue. So on the 2nd, I get a phone call stating that she needs the PM needs to come over with the demolition crew because there's work that needs to be done in my unit. I knew nothing about this for 2 months. So they showed up. We had one meeting brief. They went back and assessed, came back the next day, second meeting. I just found out that I'm going to be without a kitchen for 2 months. They're tearing out all the appliances, the wall, all the cabinetry. And yet I have a new lease. So now here are my options. Get a lawyer, you know, call Echo and beg them to hold my hand, right? This is what's going on every place around this town.
And what are they doing for you in regards to you not having a functioning
Told
kitchen?
me I had to pack and move stuff out.
And they're not helping to support that.
We are going to negotiate that Monday.
Do you have to pay the rent while they're doing it?
We're going to negotiate
No,
that.
yeah, you shouldn't have to pay the rent
point
while
is, it
they're
shouldn't
doing
be
their
happening.
remodel.
They had ample time to give me notice. I could have vacated, whatever.
Well,
So, but forget my situation. I can deal with it, okay? Point is, it's happening to a lot of people here today. Not in 3 months when a new unit comes up, you know, down on Casanova somewhere, right? And 65% of us rent. We are not getting any support from the city. And what I have here is documents on city elements on your supposed 548 units, which is not true. I just sent Hans a woman's story on Haffa, which is one of yours. I've got a list of all of those that are on your website that are handling your properties for your city, okay? And it's fake. I sent a friend out an entire day to go went to city housing, hit every one of these, you know. Oh, I'm, you know, in between jobs and I'm, you know, made up all these stories, right? And one of them that Daddy offered me was $6,000 a month. And he's on your list. Somebody has to pay attention to this.
Well, the one thing that I will say I appreciate about Karen is she's willing to stick her neck out there where a lot of renters won't because of fear of retaliation. And so I appreciate people like Karen. It's unfortunate that things like this are happening to her.
Well,
But to your point,
I've lived in my building for over 30 years. These, through, it was in trust, and a new buyer, couple bought it, and then they got divorced. So one of them owns the building. When that happened, they hired, 4 years ago, this new property management company. Okay? It has been absolute hell since March 2020 in that building because of them. I mean, it's...
well, and then AB 1482 I know is part of the conversation as well.
well, 1482 is just your top end protection,
Well, but the changes that happened in regards to how property management companies behave with renters.
And that's what rent control does. I know in the Bay Area, in Alameda County, for example, it's 2%. And in the situation I'm in, I had to have 2 months' notice, not 24 hours. That's rent control.
So clearly, this is why renters kind of had its own section in the feedback that I was giving from last week's meeting, because there's a lot of issues in relation to renters that we need to address. Thank you, Karen.
Bob Evans.
How are you?
New Monterey, and I'm here because I'm trying to figure out how to get renters involved in our New Monterey Neighborhood Association so that they have a voice.
I love it.
So if you have ideas about how we get renters involved in the association,
No, but you just gave me an idea.
let me know.
Well, I know one renter here, I won't say any names, is a resident of your neighborhood, so maybe there's an opportunity there, but I will
Look at that person.
Hey, I didn't say anything.
Wink at that person real quick.
Bob, did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Well, we appreciate you being here. Do you want to go, Esther? You're placing yourself.
No, I was getting him to sign up. But yeah, so I'm Esther. I've been actually the voice of renter issues for the last couple of years here. Happy to see some traction after the time I've invested in this, and Tyler's been a good partner, and Alan as well. So I have a group called Monterey County Renters United that's on Facebook. On Nextdoor, we also have a renter group. Both groups are private. So if you want to join it, we kind of vet it a little so that renters that are worried about retaliation or anything like that can be somewhat safe. And I've actually, we've been getting some more turnout. Luckily, this is an example of it at council meetings. And finally, they kind of can't put us off anymore. So the city manager has asked me for a meeting. And last week, I put out a call on both of those pages to hear renter stories of anybody, and, anonymously and protected. And I can't tell you how many people and how many cases in just 1 week. Karen and I started working on this about 4 years ago. And when we first started meeting with every council member, every assembly member and senator, we put together a packet and collected stories back then. We paid to have this packet put together. We gave it to all of them. There were probably 100 stories in there back then. And rather than use old stories, I put out this call for new ones. And they are worse and still many. And they range from uninhabitable units that are, mold infested and people having health problems, to people being discriminated against. I mean, one example is a divorced mother with 3 kids that could afford a house that she was looking at. When she was asked about her husband, she said, well, we're not together, he pays child support. The child support alone would have covered the rent on the house. They denied her. And she knew that it was because of that, because the house stayed on the market for other people to look at it. And they refused her because she was a single mother. So we have all kinds of, the renters category encompasses everybody. It's students, seniors, single parents, all minorities, every low income worker, so we've got to make a point of paying attention to this. And the only way we can get anybody to pay attention to us is public pressure at these council meetings, because otherwise we're going to put another X amount of years into this and really not get anywhere. So I'm happy to talk to anybody after this. And I'm also on the board of a nonprofit called the Housing Resource Center of Monterey County. And we work specifically on rapid rehousing and homelessness prevention. So Eloise, I want to talk to you afterwards, because
You can maybe go, they're starting a new housing thing in Seaside now too.
yeah, that's a homeless shelter, but
maybe you can be
what
on the
I
board
work
for that
on
one too.
with this group is actually homelessness prevention, because
Okay.
what we see happen in all of these in the nonprofit world, and even the city councils that give money that they get federal money to them, is they all work on people's problems once they become homeless, but nobody really connects the dots to the simple fact that before someone becomes homeless, they are usually a renter that can't afford their rent. After moving, every time their rent has gone up and they run out of options, maybe they're lucky enough to find someone that they can rent a room from, and once they can't afford that anymore, they are homeless. And homeless doesn't mean people just living in encampments. It means people that don't have a home, a permanent home. So it is not just the people who are mentally ill or addicted or whatever, that people who say that it's not our problem. It is our problem. These are our neighbors. These are people that you come across daily in your lives and you don't even realize it. They make your lattes. They help, they clean the medical office that you're visiting. Those people are the ones that if you don't even know if they're homeless or not. And you'd be surprised how many of them are. So I'm happy to talk to anybody else that wants to in detail about this, but we really have to change the narrative, because just talking about affordable housing and rent control doesn't do it. We've been at it. It's not working. Everybody complains about homelessness. Connect homelessness directly to the unaffordable rent problem, and then we can prevent more homelessness.
So I want to echo everything that Esther just said, because there's a lot of conversation, and folks approach me a lot around this conversation around homelessness and trying to deal with that problem. But how we deal with the homelessness problem absolutely has to include how do we prevent additional people from continuing to expand that. If we try to just address homelessness issues for people that are already homeless, and yet the faucet is still pouring people into that system,
Into the leaking
we're
bucket.
not investing our public dollars appropriately.
Just the time check, Tyler. It's 3:43. I've got to leave at 4. I'd really love to hear from folks. Which of the ideas you've heard about are you like gangbusters for? Or which of the funding ideas you've heard about are you really for or against?
Yeah.
I think we really need that feedback.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's keep that in mind as we continue going around.
Okay, I'm Pat Krupski or Patrick. I go by both, whatever you like. I'll make it quick. I know we got to hurry up and get people talking. I'm still kind of a novice when it comes to housing legislation and politics. So I'm trying to, I'd love to talk with Alan or Tyler afterwards and maybe get some baby steps on how I can get involved. I'm kind of curious about, one, of course, I'm wanting to help homeless, underprivileged, or at-risk people. But I'm also, I can't help but to think about people on, people that get like Section 8 housing or Social Security, and they're kind of stuck in that system, and it's a great help, it's a lifesaver, but, what if they want to, take baby steps towards getting out into the real world, someone on Section 8, they can't work that much, or the Social Security, not Section 8, someone on Social Security can't work that much because the Social Security office will, take away their payments. And so, I know that's a work issue, not a housing issue, but there's got to be some parallels. So I'm curious about that. Yeah.
So Pat, I appreciate your feedback, and I think it connects to a lot of the things that we've heard so far. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful if people could just go into a housing office and get assistance with a lot of these things that are kind of ambiguous, not clear, hard for people to wrap their mind around dealing with the bureaucracy. So I appreciate you sharing your comments. All right, Wes, I'm going to turn this around for you, to you.
Okay, thanks. All right. So my name's Wes White, Salinas, Monterey County Homeless Union. So if you want to talk about homeless issue, I'm right here. A lot of people who do end up homeless, there is that the room key and home key and the cares. A lot of this money goes to sweeps, and you know, we're dealing with maybe 10% of the population who actually get indoors, which is great and it's fantastic. We need another 50 programs if we're actually going to tackle like the remainder. And that to me is always my primary concern is who's left and how are those people dealt with by public agencies, by people, businesses, and you know, nature of money. So this renter thing is definitely, I concur with everything Esther just said, and I'm looking forward. I don't know what. This is my first meeting here, so I can't really say like any kind of feedback to give for the meeting, but happy to support and spread the message.
Thanks, Wes. Okay. Jason, you're up.
Jason Reed. I live in Old Town. I own a home not far from the Crone House that Tyler's speaking to. I'm interested as a homeowner and as a resident, longtime resident of Monterey, that housing, affordable housing, is part of our. It has to be part of our community. It is part of the community, and it has to be addressed in a way that, you know, is more satisfying than we're presently doing. As to the financing part of it, I think the only thing I can add to what Tyler said is the Fort Ord property should be on the table and be leveraged. Whether it's sold or there's development permits or it's leased long term, it somehow needs to be monetized, be part of the total picture for housing for Monterey. It's a valuable resource. It has very long-term implications, I know, but we have very desperate situation right now. Thank you.
Yeah. I will just add on the Fort Ord property quickly that my hope is that we can actually leverage it, keep it with city ownership. I think there's so much opportunity for us, and if we sell it, that's like we're going to lose those opportunities. So, you know, just throw that out for whatever it's worth. Oh, beautiful.
My name is Dino Cocalis. I live in Skyline, and I'm one of the privileged residents who owns an expensive home, and I'm in favor of the idea that was given, if I was to sell my house, that 1% of it given to taxes. What do I need more millions? I don't. I'd be happy to offer.
You want to chat after this? If you're looking to get rid of some, I can be your gal.
This is my first meeting here, and it's an eye-opener. I am touched by this entire situation. It's unbelievable, and I'm sorry that, I'm glad that I'm not involved in homelessness, but how else can I assist with having money and offering that tax that you discussed?
Yeah.
I think that's a good.
You can convert part of your home and rent it out at an affordable rate.
Or an
It's
ADU.
option. Yep.
Okay.
We need homeowners that want to rent at an affordable rate.
Thanks, Dina, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We can go in the back and then we can come back towards the front.
I just have one comment. I've been a long time renter on the peninsula, 23 years. I owned a home for a long time up in Danville, and I've always taken good care of any home I've rented in Carmel, Pacific Grove, and now 7 years in the Old Town. What I don't understand is in Carmel and Pacific Grove, once I was in a rental for a couple of years, the rent would stay the same. One house didn't raise it for 5 years, another house 7 years. Because I took good care of them. I mean, I like gardening, so I always fix their yards up and everything. And I don't understand, I mean, I'd love to find a landlord who feels that same way, but I moved here and it's that rent increase for sure every year. And I know I am renting from a difficult property manager right now, but I pay my rent on time, I take care of the house and the yard. But it would be nice if you're a longer term rental on a property, why can't they keep the rent the same? I am on one of the commissions here, the Historic Preservation, which has nothing to do with this issue, I realize. And I'm also on the board of Carmel Heritage. And our lady who's working in our office has been renting from the same property, well, no, excuse me, they changed a few years ago. But for 15 years, her rent was never raised. A new property manager comes on board, and now they're raising it like, and it's an apartment on Delavina. They're raising it like $125 a year, which is so hard for her, so we keep her on so she can try to stay there for longer. I mean, she's been there 20 years already. So it's just too bad that it can't be stabilized if you've proven yourself to be a good renter. Or tenant, I guess I should say. But that's just one of my observations over the years.
Do you want to introduce yourself and share everybody where you live?
Well, I'm Kathy Collum, and I just live not far from him, actually, further up Franklin, on a corner of Cedar and Franklin. It's a cute little colonial, which I love. But you know, it started out low. I mean, they raised, this is interesting. I rented it at the price they advertised, and then when I went to sign the papers, they raised it $100 because the owner felt she did such a great job remodeling the bathroom, which is the tiniest bathroom on the peninsula, believe me. So at the signing of papers, it's raised $100, which I thought was probably illegal from what they advertised. But there were 5 other people who wanted the place too, but because my credit score was better, I got it. So I accepted it. Not happy, of course, but what are you going to do?
Well, and when you give this example of somebody's rent being increased $125 a year, I mean, whose salary a year gets $125 a year, and then not even
during
to
the pandemic, it was raised that much in 2020.
well, and then not to consider the cost of all the other things in life that are increased, like your health care and all the other things, right? So I appreciate you sharing that and being here today. Let's...
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Victoria Knight. I live in New Monterey on Linden Street, and basically have a slightly different thing. I mean, I read about the registry and that, which I thought was a great idea. The street I live on has a lot of apartments. Most of the people have been there for years because they're basically privately owned, and the owners don't seem to raise the rents. One block of apartments is all Russians from DLI. I mean, it's just sort of a neighborhood where you don't think of them as apartment owners because they've all been there as many years as we have. My big issue is that when I bought the house 30-something years ago, they were coming up the hill in New Monterey putting in sidewalks. And then all of a sudden, and they told us when I bought the house that, oh, we'd be going all the way up the hill. No, they stopped halfway down. It's like, and then when I asked them about it or kept bitching about it, they said, well, no, people like the woodsy feeling. Well, given the people who are walking up and down the hill, I don't think dodging cars is a way to get a woodsy feeling. You know, I think you want a sidewalk like they have in every other neighborhood. Yeah. So my big question is, with the density of population in New Monterey, where the hell is all the money going in New Monterey? In Monterey. It's not going in the New Monterey neighborhood. I know that because we don't have sidewalks. The lights leave much to be desired. There's so many things that I think they look at it and say there's a lot of rentals, we don't need to upgrade anything here, we just leave it. And that because people live in rentals, they don't want to live in a neighborhood that looks like people take care of it. I mean, it's just sort of the circular thing of, and most of the people who own those rentals, like I said, are private individuals, and they've owned them for a long time, and rarely do they seem to raise the rents.
Well, I'd love to connect offline at some point and see that space with you to kind of get a better idea. I know that we have a 1% sales tax that's dedicated to fixing roads and sidewalks and that nature. But if there's no sidewalk there, I wonder if there's a plan to do something with that. So let's connect, and I'd love to hear more about that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Amanda. I live up behind MPC on Glenwood Circle and just care about this issue as you all do and want to hear ideas. Thank you.
Amanda was here last week, so some of the feedback that you see that I gave from the beginning was partially contributed by Amanda, so thank you.
Very little. Yes, thank you.
It was a team effort.
Hi, my name's Lori Avey, and I live in New Monterey on Belden, and I'm also very privileged. Have a single family home, and it's just so sad hearing these stories. And I guess what I've always been living, to whom much is given, much is required, and so like I donate a lot of my time with feeding the homeless and doing environmental causes, but it just drives me crazy the gaps that we've had in our culture, even through the pandemic, and how much richer the rich have gotten, and it's just, something's got to be done. And I think we're not the only one. It's all over the country. I've been reading things, and so that's why, any kind of solutions that we look at. I know, like Luis Alejo just, I think he was proposing they have a homeless, staff person to look at that problem. So I think, we need to, it's like, I know as a city we're kind of limited, but I'd like to maybe figure out how can we join forces, and get some scale of this problem, because it's not just in Monterey.
And I'll say, Alan and I are both part of a group that we call the Monterey Peninsula Housing Coalition. Excuse me. My water. Thank you, Nancy.
Oh, cool.
And the goal there is to work with other electeds in the region across the peninsula, so from Marina down to Carmel by the Sea. And we also have representation from the county, state legislatures, and with Jimmy's office, Congressmember Jimmy Panetta. So we try to capture all levels, and we're really looking at the idea of how can we look at this issue of housing from a regional perspective. And it gets to that. I could spend a whole session on that conversation, but we could talk more too about that too.
Oh, my name is Trevor. I'm a house owner in Monterey, just living down the road from here, and this issue is, I'm interested in the issue of how to deal with homelessness, because I have a good dear friend that's currently living in hotels across the area, and they only let you stay a certain number of nights, and she's got to constantly move out, and it's eating her money away. And staying at hotels is just as expensive, if not more, than renting a place in Monterey. And it would be nice to have her be connected to someone that can give her space for a price, so she doesn't have to travel to all these hotels and motels.
Well, Esther, I'm wondering, would you mind? I saw you doing it for somebody else earlier, and I should have done a better job of being conscious of this, because there are some sensitive things that are being brought up here. Could you give Trevor some information in regards to like the Housing Resource Center and maybe Echo, whatever might be good for him to be able to share with his friend?
Is it the Housing Resource Center that oversees that housing program that I saw on either your Facebook page or the Facebook page for the group, where you match people? Now they need to make
that's home match.
Home match.
That's to rent rooms.
Right.
Then the one that I'm on the board is called the Housing Resource Center of Monterey County, and they work on rapid rehousing if someone becomes homeless, but also more importantly, homelessness prevention.
Yeah.
So they are.
But home match might also be an option,
for sure.
right?
Home match is excellent. They do, before everybody would have to go on Craigslist and find a room to rent, they do all the vetting. They're like matchmakers for people that have a room to rent and people who need a room to rent.
And do they overcome obstacles like requiring first and last, requiring 3 times the rent,
Both
requiring
of those organizations work
a
on
significant deposit? Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to talk to anybody afterwards a little bit more. I don't want to take up, because our council members' time is a little bit more
Limited.
Okay.
I'm Nancy Selfridge, and I'm basically here to learn. Tyler invited me. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Nancy.
I'll go. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Either way.
I'm on the ground. Lindsay Knight, local from Carmel Valley, and I currently live over by the aquarium. I'm really interested in affordable rent so that people can save and they can put away money so that, you know, within a reasonable amount of time, they can put a down payment on a home. Except problem around here is any home is at least $600,000. You get fined with mortgage insurance if you can't put down 20%. You have to have really good credit. It's an incredibly competitive market. You're probably going to be paying over what it's listed for, and if somebody's got more money, you're out. I mean, if they're willing, if they have more cash in the bank, you don't stand a chance. So I really actually want to see options for people who want to move from renters who, yes, have middle income jobs. You don't qualify for affordable housing if you don't make over, I think it's $48,000. You can't live in this town on less than $48,000. I tried. I worked in the nonprofit sector making $55,000. There's no way I could save a penny. So the fact that there's this group of $50,000 to let's say $90,000 a year earners, that they can afford their rent, they can live fairly comfortably, they maybe can put away a little bit for retirement and emergencies, but they can't stash away cash for down payments on houses. We need housing in the $250,000 to $450,000 range so that there's an entry for us to move up, and then as our rentals become open, there's more availability for people who are going to stay renters for the rest of their lives, but at least they're less at risk because now there's more options. And so the housing shortage really can be solved by allowing people to level up, not, oh, guess what, if you come from privilege and your parents help you, which all of my millennial friends do, then you're good to go. But if not, nope, sorry, there's no way for you to build here. So I'm honestly contemplating leaving the area, and that's really unfortunate because I take a lot of pride in being from here. I contribute back to my community, I donate, I do litter cleanups. I want to make this place better, but I don't feel I have a lot of partners in that, and I don't see a future for myself here.
Thank you for sharing, Lindsay. I want you to stay, by the way, but obviously this is why you're here, right? These are the challenges.
Yep.
So, thank you for sharing your story.
Hi, I'm Roberta Myers, and I live in New Monterey, and I can see that there are homeowners and renters from New Monterey here. I want to say that for all of us to improve our community, we need to vote. One way to vote is to join a neighborhood association. Next week, yeah, there's a New Monterey Neighborhood Association annual meeting, and the guest speaker happens to be here. Renters can belong to neighborhood associations. In the New Monterey Neighborhood Association, I don't believe there are any renters. It doesn't cost that much. You can have a voice. Join.
So it's the 16th of March. Is there?
The 16th of March at Hilltop Center.
Oh, it's in person.
Yes. It's in person.
Okay. I thought we were doing Zoom, but I know things have been changing here. So.
Well, we can do it.
No, that works.
We're doing it.
I love in person. I love being with you all.
Where do you find information on when that meeting is?
Well, I'm going to put it on Facebook, and I'm going to put it on Nextdoor.
Okay, Nextdoor.
And if you give me your email, I'll send you an email.
Unless you're within a certain radius, you won't see it. It won't.
But you live in New
But a neighborhood association, that should
But
Right.
if you want to include other, neighborhoods around you, it limits.
Can't you look up MNA somewhere? Don't we have a
I'll
Facebook?
find it.
And let me know.
I'll find
yeah,
it.
let me know. Yes.
I actually totally forgot about solutions, and I know that's important to Alan to capture, like, what are we in support of? Obviously rent control, but again, I really think there's a huge group of middle-class working individuals in this town who probably have college degrees, probably have college debt, are making, you know, $75,000 give or take, and does not want to rent for the rest of their life and doesn't have an access point to scale here. But in the meantime, we're renters, and of course I support rent control and a rental registry. I also feel like the government needs to be responsible for affordable housing, and by affordable housing, I mean affordable home ownership. So the idea that this four-doored property is an option, there are other areas that instead of allowing people to add a second level to their home and increasing their water credits, or the fact that these homes that are unoccupied, that we're talking about taxing, which I'm totally in favor of, they have certain water credits, but nobody lives there, let's say 9 months out of the year. Right. Well, their water credits need to go to us so that we can have affordable housing through tiny homes and homes in a box. These are literally things. Tiny homes, 475 square feet, 1 bedroom. They're like, you can tier them up. They're made of those container boxes. They're so affordable. They're so durable. These homes in a box now, they're $50,000. They pop them up in 4 hours. We need to be having pop-up housing here that is in the price range of $200,000 to $400,000 that people can put down $20,000. That's reasonable. And they can get in an access point and they can live there. Well, their lives scale up and maybe they partner up and maybe they choose to have kids or not, but they have a point to start with.
Can I ask, have you looked at the city's affordable home ownership programs or not? And is there, okay. So we do
I have no savings to even
okay, so we do have some programs like that. Maybe we need to augment them. I'm not sure, but it would be good to connect, and we can maybe connect you with the housing office, because we do have some. We have some rental assistance, or not rental. We have some down payment assistance programs, and we also have some affordable homes that the city owns that they sell to people, and then they're basically deed restricted affordable.
I have heard about a few of those in Pasadena, I think is one of those developments that said you need to have a certain designated amount. But now affordable housing, an affordable home, $500,000.
So we have some that are more like 250, like you were saying.
Okay.
I think we need more, but we do have some of those.
Are they in safe neighborhoods? You know, like these are the things that. Okay.
But the problem is there's very little inventory, and inventory hasn't been
There
added
you
in
go.
ages, and nobody's selling properties. So
and I'll be honest, I probably don't qualify for
But
some
that's
of these
something you would
programs.
like to see is
Yes.
more of that.
More housing that's accessible, more programs for the working middle class, which middle class in this town is $60,000 to $90,000 a year, and honestly raising that bar for people who qualify for affordable rent. Like he said, City of Monterey is way more expensive than the county cost of living, an average wage or average median income.
Yep.
Another thing is, we talk about how do we fund it? Well, sometimes it's not about funding from government, which, let's be real, is ultimately all of our taxes, so it's really funding from us. Let's talk about how it could come from funding from employers, like requiring all employers in our county to pay an annual cost of living adjustment to their employees.
living wage.
Get me excited, Lindsay.
To all essential workers.
No, all workers are essential.
Yeah,
so
but
all workers.
They weren't called essential until the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I would just point out that some of the
They'd be screwed without us.
tax measures that were discussed last week wouldn't necessarily be taxes that we would pay, right? So if somebody has a second home here, they're not a resident of this town.
True.
So it's probably an opportunity for us to leverage some of those dollars that aren't impacting us locally.
Yeah.
And then just in regards to the point about the neighborhood associations, from my experience being on the council, all the neighborhood associations in the entire city, maybe less so Laguna Grande, where Esther is the president of that neighborhood association, but even on her neighborhood association, most people involved in neighborhood associations are homeowners. So I just want to echo your point that we really need to find a space of trying to get more renters involved in all of the neighborhood associations. So I appreciate
my specialty.
So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm liking the purple feel today. A little pop of color on the top here.
Oh, it's my turn. Oh, hi, I'm Susan Ricketson. I've lived here all my life. Go Doors. 1966. I've seen a lot of changes in the community, and I'm curious what's driving these rents. To me, personally, I mean, have we looked at the military and their housing allotment, and the fact that we have another home, and we're lucky enough we have a home in Pacific Grove, and families are moving over there out of here because, I'm sorry, because of the schools. We all know this. Yep. You know, what's going on? Are we talking, you know, I mean, the house next door to us set their rent based on what the military would allow plus a little bit. Is that, are we looking at that?
100%.
That is causing this problem? And truth
because the military releases that information and property managers
they go by
look at that.
And it's counterintuitive. Correct me if I'm wrong. La Mesa School is closing? It is not. Oh. What about families out there? Is it true that there are, you know, there's housing, available housing out there, and yet families are being allowed to take that allotment and, you know, take up inventory that could be used for people who are, I want to say, more permanent residents?
Sure.
It's troubling to me.
Yeah.
And is that a Jimmy Panetta thing?
I definitely think that there is a conversation at that level. I've had some conversations with leadership at some of the military installations, and at the end of the day, they have to be they are a stakeholder in this conversation, and it's going to be of value to them to try to find a way of helping to stabilize the cost of living, because if they're having to go back to Congress every year and say, hey, we need this the cost of living for this region, for our military personnel in this region to go up so much every year, right, it's going to be less of an incentive for Congress to want to keep military installations in this region. So I think that they have, they need to bring their voice to the table and be part of these conversations. And I think Jimmy's a good person to have as an advocate. I've heard the MPS president talk about being supportive of trying to be part of the solution. The installation commander at MPS as well. Lots of conversation, but it's hard because there's a lot of bureaucracy with that too.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
can I ask a quick question before I head out?
Yep.
Is something like this even plausible? It's just something that comes to mind. Say there's a 1-bedroom for rent for $2,000. That's actually the average cost of a 1-bedroom in this town, specifically the city. Let's say somebody from San Francisco wants to come down here. Oh, Monterey, get out of the city. It's $2,000 for you. But hi, if you're a resident and you've already been a resident here for 5 years, it's only $1,800 for you, and the government subsidizes it. Oh, you're a local, you were born and raised here, it's only $1,700 for you, and the government subsidizes it. You're a teacher, you work at a nonprofit, you work at a hospital, but not as a doctor, because they're good to go.
No, doctors aren't even.
Yeah, true.
We're gonna have a doctor shortage
if they've
if we
got the
keep this
debt.
up.
Yes. So is there something that subsidizes a local preference housing?
yes, it's a good idea. I like it. It's another idea for a program. So, you know, we'll definitely add that to the list and keep that going. Let's try to finish wrapping up real quick because, yeah, you're good. Thanks for coming, Lindsay. Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Good to
You
see
went already.
Good to see you.
Has been
Last but
around.
not least.
Me, Bob Bluth. I'm from Monterey. I live up on Jefferson Street, and I'm concerned about the water issues that we're facing and how that's going to impact any ability to develop the kind of housing that we've talked about. And I really do think that staff at the city should be looking at commercial buildings that could be converted, that have water credits, that could then be made somehow into a viable housing solution. And one idea might be Heritage Harbor, where there's a lot of different buildings. They're not being as rented as well as they used to as commercial properties. Maybe those could be converted along with the aquarium into a housing support for teachers and city staff and other employees that are local. Maybe this between the city and the people at the aquarium, we could look at, you know, that as an option for coming up with new housing, and then other commercial properties. I know that we've been looking at properties on Garden Road, but the more and more we can do with that, the faster we can address some of these issues, because until the water credit issue changes, we're not going to go anywhere. And so we need to look at issues that we can address now and move ahead in a viable way that within a reasonable time frame, some of the things we've talked about could be made into reality.
And I just want to highlight one of the things that he identified that folks may not be as aware about. So one of the things that the council did 2 years ago was did a zone overlay for Garden Road. So it's Garden Road, the street that's parallel to the airport, is zoned for light industrial, and it's still zoned for light industrial, but we've added another zoning code that allows it to be residential as well. And so a developer actually came to the city with that idea, and we've moved forward with it. So it is a good piece of feedback, and we chatted about the other day too. So okay, so I appreciate hearing from everybody. We have 15 minutes left, but I just kind of want to do a quick check-in. Maybe we could do a little bit of a straw poll. And Alan, maybe can you help by counting?
Yeah, although I really have to leave soon.
Yep, so let's just do a really quick count here and just kind of see how people feel about these different options. And you can vote multiple times. Like if you're in support of it, generally, maybe we can do a yes, maybe, no kind of thing, right? So that if you're not really sure about it, I don't want you to vote something that you're not.
We're gonna go like this.
There you go. Yes, I like it. But we have to do it separately so Alan can count. Okay. So the first is the unoccupied home tax. So that's like a vacancy tax. Are you those in favor of it? Let's just see a show of hands.
Sorry.
And Alan's counting, so we have.
I hope so.
You got it?
Wow.
Wow, you're fast. Okay,
Nice.
who are maybes? Like on the fence
Nancy.
about it?
2.
2, 3?
3.
Who are no's? Okay, this is just a little bit of democracy in action, so we're just playing with the numbers here. Okay, property transfer tax? Yes? See a show of hands? Yeah.
I see 12.
Okay, who are maybes on that one? 1, 2, 3, 4. Who are no's? Okay. So cannabis retail tax, and this context we'll just say, because we know it's going to go forward, who's in favor of using some of that funding towards housing-related programs?
I count 16.
Wow. Okay, that's clear. Who's a maybe on that one? I think that was everybody.
Yeah.
Is there a no? Okay. All right. Project Home Key. Who'd be interested in potentially the city of Monterey looking at doing a Project Home Key in the city of Monterey? And then maybes? And then no's. Okay. Municipal bonding. I know that one's a little bit elusive because what exactly would that look like? But I'm not even going to ask that one because we would have to drill in on that one a little bit more, and it is a little bit complex. And then I don't know how to ask this question in regards to Fort Ord. How do we ask this as like a yes?
Should we sell it?
There you go.
Get some money for it instead of
Okay.
letting it sit there.
How about we have a couple of options? How about we have a couple options? One could be that we do something with it, maybe develop affordable housing or housing, let's just say housing in general, or one could be selling it, and then a third option is like, I don't know, like don't ask me. So
You were talking about public-private.
okay, so we could do a public.
Release the land to somebody who builds stuff.
But that would be the first one, which is like
The
develop,
problem with that is
do
you
some
don't
development.
have infrastructure there.
So
We
let's
tried
just
it.
so who is in favor of us, the city doing something, whether it be a public-private partnership or developing affordable housing or whatever that looks like? Who is in favor of doing that with the land,
That's 30 years in progress today.
as opposed to doing nothing with it?
It's so nice.
Okay, and then the second option was selling the property. Who's in favor of that?
4, I see.
And who's in favor of, what was the last one?
Developing.
Don't know what to do.
Oh, who doesn't know what to do with it? Okay, so those were the financing options that I heard. Were there any new ones that were added that I missed?
The subsidizing rentals with, for locals.
Yeah, but where are the funding coming from for that? We're talking about the funding mechanisms.
Are there state or federal funds
I don't think
that
there were
are
any other.
available to write grants for?
Well,
So-
the registry was funding.
Yes.
Is there somebody here at the city that looks into that?
We do have a housing staff that tries to apply for things. How much they're focused on that? Like, how much are they actually capturing of what they could? I don't know. That's a good question. But the city of Monterey is pretty good at being able to capture funding from the state when there's money available.
What about taking the business license fees from property management companies
And allocating that.
to housing? Because all of those guys own thousands of units.
Okay, so let me just quickly jump in with this one. So this has to do with the conversation we had around a rental registry. And so what happened is the city currently has, I think, like 97 rental complexes that have 10 or more units, and they pay a business license fee. So the council, it seems like there's some interest in expanding that number to include more. So what Esther is saying here is take that funding from the business license fee from landlords or property management companies that are paying that and allocating that towards affordable housing or housing related programs.
Right.
So who would be in favor of something like that?
Like to subsidize, like what Lindsay was saying.
I count 15.
Okay, who's not in favor of that? Who wants to leave that in the general funds? We should let the city do whatever they want with it.
The city council and staff.
Gosh. Okay, well, I think we got some good, soft, kind of straw poll numbers. I appreciate everybody participating in that exercise. Esther has a clipboard, so if you did not provide your contact information, we will not be able to follow up with you. But what I would like to do is set up a meeting with all those that have been involved just to look at next steps, because there could be an opportunity to potentially put something on the ballot and us taking action now to start raising some revenue, to start doing some of these things as far as the programs that we've talked about. So we could start getting this going now, and I want to include all those that are interested in engaging in that process. And we just need as many people as possible because, Alan and I work 2 day jobs. We're busy people, but as much as we can get help from the community and make this more of a community-driven effort, I think the better and more successful we'll be in actually getting action done. So I appreciate so much everybody for being here. I know it's cold because we're out of the sun now. So any true last minute thoughts before we wrap up today?
Turn out at council meetings and be persistent. Show up at every public comment.
Quick shout out to the Monterey Housing Squad that's forming. There's a group in the community that's forming around housing related issues, particularly for renters. So if you want, I include that in my emails that I send out, so I can let you all know that link so you can sign up to get email invites. Anything else?
I just want to thank everybody for your feedback. I really appreciate it. I would love to stay around and chat individually, but I'm actually late for another event. So thank you all very much, and please get in contact with me if you want to, share any additional information.
I'll send a follow-up email, and I'll put Alan in the CC line. I'm going to put everybody else in the BCC line just to protect everybody's contact information.
And I'll capture this and share it with my notes.
Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Alan and Tyler, for being here.